people, right? God's love that was abiding in him, and it was just compelling him, and I'm sure his wife, to be in the Philippines for so long and labor for the Lord. And so it's the love, right? You know, that's what 1 Corinthians 13, 7 and 8 tells us. Love what? Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Then verse 8, it starts off by saying, love never fails. Love never fails. You know, in Matthew chapter 22, and I'm going to turn there, in Matthew chapter 22, in this chapter, Jesus is being tested by many questions from the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And we'll pick up in verse 34. It says, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, in other words, one of the Pharisees, a lawyer, now this means either like an expert in the law of Moses or a scribe, okay? A lawyer asked him a question, testing him, and saying, teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And we know that when it says neighbor, it's referring to anyone with whom you might come in contact with. Right? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then in verse 40, he goes on to say, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. In other words, Jesus is saying the whole of the law and the prophets is summed up in these two commandments. Now, these scriptures that Jesus quoted, it's from the Old Testament, and we know that we are not under the law, but we know that this still applies to us today. Amen. Right? We're still supposed to love God with all our hearts and just, you know, with everything that's in us, we're to love him and to love our neighbor. It holds true for us today, right? And this morning especially, I wanted to look at that second part, that second commandment, where it said, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And there are many ways in which the love of God can be expressed, right? Just to name a very few, you could show kindness to people around you. You could be patient with people, or, you know, helping people in need, you know, praying for people in need. You know, Jesus did all these things, right? And those things are important. You know, giving to help the poor. All those things are very important. I am not taking away from any of that. But I think the greatest thing, the greatest way that we can express our love toward the lost is to give them the gospel. Amen. Is to give them the gospel. Amen. And you can see why, because that has eternal consequences, right? Eternal ramifications. Now, you can help the poor, and you can pray for the healing of people, but that's still in the temporal area, right? It's for this life here. But when we give them the gospel, and it changes the whole, for eternity, right? It affects people for eternity. It's not just for this life, right? So you see, you know, that's, I guess I've known that, but God is just making that so strong in my heart. that, the greatest way that we can love people, especially, of course, I'm talking about the lost right now, is to give them the gospel. Now, does that mean that we're to shove it down their throat? No, right? Of course, but that's where prayer comes in. Now, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about prayer, but I'm not worried that I'm going to, what's the word I'm looking for? I know Pastor's been, sharing on prayer, but what I have to say here just kind of drop in the bucket, right? Compared to the vast knowledge the pastor has concerning prayer. And so I'm not going to be, stepping all over his messages. I'm not worried about infringing, upon his message, right?
Go for it.
But see, this is where prayer comes in. A lot of times, see, I'm a very quiet person. Now, when I say that, I know a pastor kind of smiles sometimes, but really, and it's hard for me to open my mouth unless I have to. If I have to, I'll do it. Because I've been a teacher, I know what it is to get before a class, blah, teach them. And if I have to, I can do it, right? And of course, God helps me now to be up here. I would never be doing this aside from the Lord. I can assure you that. I never used to open my mouth, But so it's hard for me to just, go up to, to talk to people and witness. But that's where prayer comes in. Do you remember Pastor? And he has said this to us many times actually in the past. Just pray that God will just bring into your life or across your path who need to hear the gospel. Just pray, and God will open the doors for you. And do you know what? It works. Having heard his pastor's message on prayer and all that, the last few weeks, and I've been really motivated more than ever, and I've been realizing, should have been praying a lot more, but so I've been praying more, and I'm noticing, for example, that I live in an apartment, and it's a senior apartment, but people are still very active, okay, and it only has 16 units, and so it's very rare, in fact, to run into people in the hallways, because somehow it's very quiet, and I really don't come across them that much. But I remember when I first moved in there about a year and about a few months ago, I was all excited, and said, okay, I'm gonna pray for every person in here to get saved. And I was gung-ho about it, But then I guess as I didn't see people and much in the hallways, and I got busy, I kind of let it go. And so recently, having heard the message about prayer from our pastor, I've been really praying, and I picked that up, been praying for our, I'm so tempted always somehow to call them the inmates, but if they're not inmates, maybe because we have such good security. I have to go through 3 locked places before I can get inside my door, my apartment. The security is very good, which I'm happy for, but somehow I always think of them as inmates, but they're tenants, residents, okay? So I've been praying for them. And then just recently, this lady next door to me, even her, I rarely really get a chance to talk to her, but I ran into her in the hallways. So I said, oh, hi, and all that, and we started talking a little bit, and she asked me, so do you have any plans to travel anywhere this year? And so I was saying, well, I don't know, because I told her I wear 2 hats. Now she already knew that I taught piano, and she knew that because I went to church, because she's seen me in the past, dressed up and get into my car on Sundays, and so she knew I went to church, and I remember months ago she had asked me something about it and said, "Where do you go?" And I said, "Oh, Amazing Grace Assembly of God Church." And she said, "Oh, where is it at?" And I said, "It's in Anaheim, right off the 91 freeway." And she said, "Oh, well, I just moved from there," and it just seemed like it was too far for her, and she just dismissed it, But this time, I was talking to her again, and I said, "Well, so I teach piano, and I'm also the associate pastor at my church." And then suddenly she kind of went, "Oh," she didn't expect that. And then she said, so do you also, she went like that, and so I knew she meant preach, And so I said, "Oh yeah, but once a month, I do preach." And I just said, "Well, you're welcome to, come with me sometime. Just if you want to visit, you're welcome to come." And all this, and in the beginning, she was almost getting ready to somehow, give me an excuse, but then suddenly she stopped and said, "Well, I just might." And I thought, wow, Claire's working, And then last Sunday, I was eating my lunch, after church, and just settling down to have my cup of tea. This is before 2 o'clock, and the fire alarm goes off. And not the little smoke alarm in my own apartment, but for the whole building, right? I did not realize how loud that thing can be. That thing is loud, and so the first thing I did, of course, kind of peeked out my door to see if I see anybody running out the door, vacating. Everything was very quiet, no smoke or anything. And the lady across the hallway, she kind of popped up out at the same time, said, "You know anything?" No, we didn't know what was happening. But the thing was so loud, I just, went back in and grabbed my keys. I had my keys in my hand. So I had my keys, and I grabbed my purse and my phone, and just make sure I just had those basic things. And I thought, well, maybe in the garage, it'll be less. I thought maybe they wouldn't have the alarm. Well, they had the alarm in the garage. It's like an indoor garage almost, right? So the alarm was going off in there. And so I thought, okay, maybe if I go to the mailbox area, it'll be a little more quiet. And I could tell that by the sense of things, everything was okay. It's just that this alarm was going off. And so finally I went out to the mailbox area, but the alarm thing was still going. So I went out onto the sidewalk, right? And there were several more that came out, and the lady finally that came out down, from the second floor, and told me that what happened was there was one lady that was baking a cake, and apparently it overflowed in the oven, and it created a lot of smoke. And I think she was okay. Everything was fine, but there's no fire, but just a lot of smoke, and that set off that big alarm. Well, and so some of us were out there, and I think people upstairs, especially, they realized everything was fine, but just to escape the alarm, I saw about 3-4 people get in their cars and just leave, just to escape from the alarm. That thing was loud. But I kind of hung around, and just because I like to see I just wanted to see what would happen. Just, the fire, I wanted to see how, when the fire truck came, right? What would happen? And so I was out there with the others, and I was surprised it took a while. Maybe it was 15 minutes or so till they came. Maybe they got word that it wasn't anything serious. But I also learned that alarm, only the firemen can turn it off, right? That no one in the apartment can turn it off. The fire department has to come and turn it off. So this thing was going and going. So we were all out there, okay? Finally, just one truck came, and 4 men got out, 4 firemen, and just they're very, they were just walking in, went into the building, and in about 5 minutes, the alarm was off. And so, everything was fine, but it was it was a jarring experience just because of the sound. But then I realized I got to talk to more of my neighbors. That was the plus side of it. Yeah, because I rarely get to talk to people there, right? And of course, when you talk to them, you're developing relationship in a way, and it's much easier to talk to them about things, right? So I thought, wow, now that works, Yeah. And then the other day, boy, I went to my hairdresser, my hairdresser, and I had kind of, talked to her about the Lord and stuff, and I could tell she may have been born again at one time, but but she was telling me, well, yeah, I used to go, but and really, and I'm coming across people like that more and more, oh yeah, I used to go to church and yeah, but right? And so anyway, but then this last time I went, from her side, that was the first thing she said was, I went